All right, we are going to bring this meeting to begin. This is the Growth and Natural Resources Committee meeting, where we are going to discuss rezoning Z2823 Hardin Road, specifically stormwater concerns. I believe we'll hear from Raleigh's stormwater staff first. We'll also have opportunity to hear from anyone involved in the case, whether it's an applicant or a neighbor or anyone with concerns or questions. Committees are really an opportunity to have an open discussion. We won't be making any decisions here about the case. There will be a public hearing. I believe it is scheduled for next week, April 2nd. So that would be the first opportunity that Raleigh City Council could take any action on this case. Just before staff begins, could folks raise their hand who would like to speak? I want to just get a sense of how many people so that I'll know how many minutes we might have time. So I see here, and I see here. All I see were 3 hands, 3 total. So that's it. No one else. Okay, very good. All right, I'll turn it over to staff.
Right. Good afternoon. I'm Hannah Recca with Planning and Development. Sure. I'm going to start with just a reminder about this request on the site and then hand it off to stormwater staff to provide some context for the discussion on stormwater. So this is rezoning request Z2823 at 3725 Hardin Road, which is at the corner of Blue Ridge Road and Hardin Road. It is a request to rezone from R4 to neighborhood mixed use, 7 stories, parking limited, conditional use. And this site is located northwest of the interchange of I-440 and Wade Avenue, south of UNC Rex Hospital campus area, and north of the North Carolina Museum of Art. Here's just an aerial view of what that site looks like currently. As a reminder, there are 6 zoning conditions that are proposed that touch on uses prohibited, prohibition of drive-throughs and drive-ins, a cap on the number of residential units and total commercial use on the site, commitment to stormwater management beyond the UDO requirements, and then conditions pertaining to a traffic light at Blue Ridge Road and a contribution to neighborhood traffic management. And here's kind of the before and after entitlement change, height difference. Those zoning conditions are capping all the uses you see here, but mainly an increase in residential entitlement. So I'll hand it off to stormwater staff to talk through.
Good afternoon, Ben Brown, City of Raleigh Stormwater. This site is located, as you can see, on Hardin Road in the west side of town. 7-acre site, like Anna said. The stormwater is basically flowing east. You can kind of see the blue and red arrows. Blue is more natural channels, and red is more hardened infrastructure like pipes and that sort of thing. Flowing west to east. Stormwater flows from approximately the middle of the site down to the southeast towards House Creek, which is closer to the 440 belt line. There at the bottom right corner of the screen. Downstream properties, there's a few commercial directly adjacent, but the majority is the residential neighborhood downstream. There are 14 documented drainage complaints downstream, and the breakdown of those are nine of those cases are severe erosion. 3 of those cases are for yard flooding. 2 are for private infrastructure failure, and 1 case of structural flooding, which is closer to the Myron Drive intersection there. The offered condition, as Hannah said, was to control runoff peak flows for the post-development condition down to the pre-development condition for the 25, 50, and 100-year storm. This is in addition to the UDO required 2 and 10-year storm. It's similar to the condition that was on the Montessori private school, which is two properties to the east there, not the directly adjacent property to the east. That was an older office building built in the late 90s before our stormwater regulations were in place. But for the private school, that had a similar condition for controlling up to the 100-year storm event. What other questions you guys might have, or any other contexts?
Could you just repeat, you said 2 of the 14 complaints were something failure? I just missed it.
Private stormwater infrastructure failure. So that means pipes on private property were failing.
And what was the one?
The one was a case of structural flooding, which is water actually into the structure of the house. That was back in 1996, but we still count it as a structural flooding case. And that was far enough, if you go back, if you go back, it was far enough downstream that it was closest to whether this site would be a big enough contributor to the drainage area to have a because the UDO does just require, if you're more than 5% of the drainage area and there's structural flooding case downstream, then you do have to go automatically up to the 100-year storm for the peak runoff control. But since it was a little unsure if it was right at 5% or not, the condition was offered by the applicant just to go up to that 100-year storm and not be UDO required at that point.
Okay. And all of these complaints, what was the year time period over which they were?
Pretty much all the way from the late 90s to as early as last year. So there's been a pretty good spread.
Okay.
And these are documented. There could be complaints out there that they haven't approached us about or anything like that. So
Thank you.
So I do want to make that clarification.
Yeah. Other questions from committee members? Councilmember Branch.
Compare by right, if this was built out with the 49 single-family homes of Imperial Surfaces compared to this, from a stormwater comparison, how would they relate?
They would have to comply with the 2 and 10 years storm rate of runoff control requirement. So assuming they were less than that 5% of the drainage area, which I think it is, and I'm going to try to draw. I'm not near as good as Bynum, so I apologize. Once you add kind of this leg here of the stream, that's where the drainage area kind of bumps up. So it's kind of in this one drainage pattern here, but then once the drainage complaint is farther down in this area, that kind of gets more to the drainage area increases so much that that's where it's on that kind of line of 4 or 5% of the drainage area. So code like requirement now, they would only have to do the 2 and 10 year storm if they developed as zoned today.
Okay.
Councilmember Patton.
Yeah. In these cases of documented stormwater complaints, what is the recourse for the residents? Like, what will have happened in these examples?
So essentially what's happens, our drainage complaint staff goes out to evaluate that complaint, has a field visit, and if they qualify for our drainage assistance program, then they get put on our prioritized list for drainage assistance projects. So that's kind of how that process goes. But it also helps the development staff for noting that there's these drainage complaints downstream that we've documented. So.
And is this neighborhood in the priority list for drainage assistance?
I would probably have to defer to Wayne Miles on that to see if they're actually programmed for a project, but
Okay.
I'm not certain of that.
He's coming, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. So the Drainage Assistance Program has been mentioned. Wayne Miles Engineering Services looks at types of factors that would rank highly in terms of qualification for that program. Such examples would be structural flooding is one that would help a project rank highly. Aging infrastructure, such as a pipe that would be failing and causing sinkholes that might cause a public safety issue or possibly endanger a structure. And then severe erosion does help qualify for our stream bank erosion program. The investigations for the complaints we've had here, none of those rose to the level that they would qualify highly for the drainage assistance program. We did do some follow-up investigations and gave some advice to the residents in terms of things that they could do, but they're not on the list of our drainage assistance program at this time.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. Councilmember Branch.
Sorry, just two more questions. Either one of you can respond. I just ask them both. The first one is, there's been a request for a 500-year stormwater feature. My question is, from the technical standard of building such a thing, are there policies or anything in place? Like, can we say, if they build this today, we know this can withstand a 500-year storm, type of storm?
So how that probability is measured is kind of goes back, it's as strong as our records are. So once you get above kind of that 100-year storm level, we don't have records going back 500 years for drainage and storms and that sort of thing. So there could be a requirement placed on it, but it's not anything that, from an engineering standpoint, that I could confidently say that it's going to definitely just to protect about this, because like I said, our records don't really go back that far. And I'm talking about not just the city, like nationwide kind of records don't really go back for drainage or weather like that. For example, FEMA does plot the 500-year storm on their flood maps, but they don't necessarily enforce anything to the 500-year storm. It's mainly just for reference. So there's not as big of an engineering confidence in that storm event as, say, we have for the 100, the 50, the 25-year. So.
Okay. And my second question, I understand we're in the process of updating our stormwater standards. Can you speak to that?
Yep, so we are updating, in dire need of updating, our stormwater design manual, and that is actually going to be on the planning commission agenda soon. But as far as addressing issues as far as drainage patterns and how they leave their site and that sort of thing, that's a major look at it, because we've seen so much infill development like in the past few years. As our stormwater code back in 2001 really wasn't geared towards infill development. It was more for greenfield development. So we're trying to accommodate more towards that. And there's also more options for like green stormwater infrastructure and things like that that'll be contained in those updates. So.
Ben, could you speak to when green stormwater infrastructure is, helpful, and maybe from like the city's perspective, when we might, adopt or implement that?
So from the city's perspective, we have recently adopted a city policy that we will, for all our city projects, the first look for stormwater treatment will be green stormwater infrastructure, to kind of see if that'll work and be feasible for our city projects. From a water quality standpoint, there's a lot of good data showing that green stormwater treatment is kind of the way to go. It essentially is taking like your stormwater and kind of soaking it through the natural ground to mimic the natural conditions that we would see on an undeveloped piece of property. So that's kind of the city's policy and commitment. Currently, the UDO doesn't regulate that you must use green stormwater infrastructure, but it is an option, a tool kind of in their toolbox they can use to comply with our water quality regulations. That's the only thing I will say for issues like the 100-year storm and flow like that. Green stormwater issue is not as effective. There's been some studies about knocking the volume down for green stormwater infrastructure. It does help in the larger event storms, but the larger event storms are so much bigger, it's tough to kind of quantify that a device that's treating an inch of runoff is effective at knocking down a 6-inch storm, sort of thing. And don't hold me to those numbers. I'm not sealing any of those numbers I just threw out.
And just for everyone's understanding, what are some examples of GSI, green stormwater infrastructure?
Yep. So you could use one that's very popular right now is a bioretention area that doesn't necessarily have an outfall. It essentially filters through 3 to 4 feet of topsoil and then gravel and then soaks into the natural ground below that. The bioretention areas that we've seen prior to now do have outfalls, and they would outlet to the downstream property, but in a more GSI standpoint, they would infiltrate all that water and not outlet it out. Something else would be like pervious pavement and pervious concrete, or pervious pavers, which are very, very popular now because of their cost. It's a lot more inexpensive now for pervious paving blocks rather than asphalt or pervious concrete, and that's essentially the same principle is where you're taking that stormwater, and instead of collecting it off your parking lot and outletting somewhere, it's soaking through your concrete or asphalt and then going into the ground.
Great.
So, but they do have their limitations on higher year storms. Like I said, like if you get a large rain event, that's still going to kind of sheet flow off your parking lot because it's just, it can't soak into the ground fast enough.
Okay, gotcha. Any other questions for staff on this? Yeah, Councilmember Patton.
Yeah, deviating a smid, I understand what you're saying, that the neighborhood, it's difficult to like point to that property and like trace all of the stormwater. But we've also heard from the neighbors stormwater concerns, and it sounds like the nature of the concerns hasn't like been high enough to get them on the list. One thing I heard from the neighbors is that there are differently sized pipes and that there might be larger pipes feeding into smaller pipes and creating some flow issues. Can you confirm if that is the case?
So on the property directly adjacent to the east, that's the older office property that was in like the 96, 98 timeframe of being built prior to our stormwater ordinance. There is a rather large pipe in their parking lot, and in doing research, they didn't have any like rezoning conditions that pertain to detaining stormwater on site, because a lot of times when we see on GIS, you have a large pipe going into a small pipe, they're detaining stormwater on site. And we had a lot of cases prior to 2001 that had these rezoning conditions placed on them that would control their stormwater to like an R4 type level. Nothing like we do today, which is pre-development. But that is something that I'm not sure why that pipe is so much bigger on their property when there's no stormwater condition I can find. But in most of the other areas, there are, mostly the pipes are following that same kind of getting bigger as you go downstream. But I will say that another update to our stormwater design manual is that we want to start permitting pipes that are on private property, because currently we don't really have anything to kind of permit a private property owner putting a pipe completely on their property. That doesn't necessarily come in for us unless it triggers some other review for us through sediment erosion control or through adding impervious. So one of the issues in the stormwater design manual is to create a private infrastructure permitting process so we can kind of keep better track of what's being placed on these private lots, because they can have an impact beyond just the private lot.
Got it. So for instance, in some of these cases where there was two cases of private stormwater infrastructure failing, the private property owner could replace it with an undersized pipe, and there would not be a way for us to know or intervene.
Currently, they could.
Currently.
Like if they're not tying into our public system or they're not disturbing more than 12,000 square feet of land, then yes, they can. That's something that could legally be done on their property without a permit from us.
I see. Okay. All right.
Okay, well, I think we'll move on and hear from anyone who's here to speak on the case. And I think we've got two folks, I'm guessing, who are both representing the case. Okay, yeah, and I'll put, let's put 10 minutes on the clock for anyone who's in favor of the case and wants to speak about that, and then 10 minutes on the clock for anyone with concerns about the case so that we can be even. We may not use all that time. Maybe we'll need more. But typically with these committee meetings, there may be follow-up questions from committee members. And then if anyone else wants to speak or needs to, kind of bring something up, we can be here until 5:30. So, if the applicant team would like to start, that would be great. And again, this is a conversation about stormwater. So let's not talk about other topics at this time. Let's really focus on that.
Yep. Brief presentation. Oh, thanks. Good afternoon, Chair Harrison and members of the committee. I'm Ashley Honeycutt-Terrazas with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street, here on behalf of Yes, sorry about that. I'm shorter than Ben. Here on behalf of the applicant, Toll Brothers Apartment Living. Again, this request, I'm sure we're all very familiar with it, to bring mixed-use development to support growth on the Blue Ridge Corridor, housing inventory in close proximity to UNC Rex, the North Carolina Museum of Art, and DHHS, I-440, I-40. Again, we're all very familiar with the site. Corner of Blue Ridge and Hardin, 7 acres, occupied by 3 single-family homes, zoned R4. more density mixed-use development recommended on this site than is otherwise entitled there today per the comp plan because of the transit investments there on Blue Ridge and to reduce vehicle miles traveled by providing commercial amenities within close proximity to where people live, work, and recreate at the museum. Again, flume, office and residential mixed use and heights up to 7 stories recommended. Urban Forum, City Growth Center, frequent transit area, Blue Ridge is transit emphasis corridor. So again, this request kind of encapturing all that, neighborhood mixed use, 7 stories, parking limited with conditional use. And next, give more flexibility for the commercial portion, and then 7 stories to accommodate that 40-foot grade change on the site. And then the PL parking limited frontage recommended by the comp plan, cultivate pedestrian connectivity and no large surface parking lots like you see in many of the office buildings around here. And we also have added several zoning conditions. You know, I'm not going to read through every one of them, but again, prohibiting certain uses based on kind of the desire to prohibit these certain commercial uses and ORM, prohibit drive-throughs, more pedestrian-friendly uses here, limit to 415 units and 20,000 square feet of commercial uses. Envision Tomorrow showed more than 650 units, almost 100,000 square feet of retail, and 480,000 square feet of office space would be possible without these use caps. So we added that, again, based on those early meetings that we've had with the community. We've had 3 neighborhood meetings and several other meetings as well. Also added, again, like we've discussed, the condition to treat up to the 100-year storm, respond to neighbor and staff concerns, regarding stormwater runoff and the stream at the rear of the site. And we heard those, several of those early on. And then obviously the traffic signal on Hardin. This was also a concern that we heard at early meetings, the need for a traffic signal there, issues with making a left out on Blue Ridge. And again, the bold, we have updated this condition since the Transportation and Transit Committee last month, just to a commitment that if the signal does not warrant, which we hope, and we've been working with NCDOT on that it will, if it's not allowed to be installed by NCDOT, we're still able to provide this, and we're not able to provide this like area-wide benefit that was requested. We would be making a $250,000 contribution to the city's affordable housing programs to provide a benefit in that way. Also added a condition to make a donation to the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, which administers the city's traffic calming program. I've personally lived on a street where that has gone through that program. It's a great program, very well administered by city staff. And after a lot of work, we were happy to make this offer at staff's request. And it's our understanding that it will increase the budget for that program and hopefully enable an additional project. So back to stormwater, which I know is the topic of discussion today. Baseline requirement, just putting it up here on the screen from UDO section 2.2.2E, the 2 and 10-year storm, which Ben just discussed. And we have committed to control to the 25, 50, and 100-year storms in addition to that. And then briefly, I'll let Connor Linton, our civil engineer with Kimley Horn, again, just give a brief overview of some of the drainage patterns in the area and what we've committed to based on some of the questions and concerns that have been raised to us. And then he and I will be available for additional questions that the committee has.
Hey, good afternoon, Council. Connor Linton with Kimley Horn and Associates. So this site, about 7 acres after accounting for the stream buffer and TCA, it's about 5 usable acres. The site currently accepts drainage from Blue Ridge Road, which flows into the jurisdictional stream on site. There is a 50-foot buffer on that stream, which means you can't have any development within 50 feet of the center line of the stream. This stream leaves the site on the eastern property line, and basically the entire site drains through that one point on the eastern property line. Like Ben mentioned, we were kind of right on the cusp of that 5% of the drainage area for those downstream drainage concerns. So we elected for the zoning condition to detain the 25, 50-year, and 100-year storms. As everyone's mentioned before me, the UDO only requires up to a 10-year storm detention. And I just want to reiterate that means that the post-development peak flow will be less than the pre-development peak flow of water leaving the site. So in theory, any downstream drainage concerns should be getting better after the stormwater is installed on site. So here to answer any questions.
Yeah, let's stop the time. And if there are any questions right now for the applicant team, I have one. Just curious if you all have considered use of GSI. Is that something that you would consider?
I mean, I can't really answer that at the moment. We haven't considered it that much yet. No.
I think there, again, kind of has been said, especially with the level of detention that we're considering here, or that we have already committed to, that we have to detain to, that's going to look like vaults, to contain the stormwater on this site. So again, I mean, we can look at it, but that really is what we're looking at in terms of stormwater control, to make sure that we get enough detention to detain to this level. So that's.
Okay. And one more question actually for Ben. Were any of those documented drainage complaints, do you have any idea if any of those were because of 100-year storm events, or what the level of storms might have been at that time?
Not based on the GSI, I couldn't answer that, but we can do some research and get back to you on that. The one that is the structural flooding, I'm fairly confident was for over the 100-year storm, because it was
Fran.
It was Fran. Yeah, it was in 1996, right after Hurricane Fran. So,
Okay.
but the others I would have to go back and look at.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council members? Councilmember Patton.
Yeah, for applicant team. It looks to me like more than half of the site is currently wooded or forested. I know you'll have your stream buffer and your TCA, but was there any consideration given to like shrinking the footprint, given like building up to the site, giving a build to, and then like really only consuming that part that's a lawn and leaving as many trees in place as possible?
Yeah, and we would have a 100-foot build too, because of the parking limited frontage that we added. So it is going to, and because of the grades of the site, it's higher up on Blue Ridge, and so the building does have to be pushed closer to the street. And then I think do you have anything else to add to that with respect to the stream? I mean, there's also a lot of trees on the other side of the stream.
Yeah, I mean, kind of echoing what Ashley just said, after accounting for build to and right-of-way dedication and tree conservation, we're already pretty limited to what we can do on site. So yeah, we're kind of maximizing the wooded area as it is. And also just want to add that the overall drainage boundary line is that dark blue line that runs along the western side of Blue Ridge Road. So everything to the west of Blue Ridge Road, including the new DHHS campus, drains to the west and does not drain towards the site or the art museum. So just wanted to clarify that.
Sure. Do you have any sort of like massing drawings that show like how much of the available property is likely to be consumed by the building?
We don't have a site plan at this time, but again, because of the grades of the site and the environmental features, it is going to have to be pushed up towards Blue Ridge, and the build to that we've committed to ensures that as well.
Okay. I imagine there probably is a massing drawing somewhere out there, like some loose concept plan. And I know it's not required, but it could be useful to provide a little bit more certainty and clarity to the residents about like where this building's going to be and how much of the trees will remain in place. Could help to visualize it.
Yeah, and it's hard, especially at this stage, where we don't have a rezoning to say like this is definitely what it's going to be and what it's going to look like. As you're trying to work all of these other things out, we haven't submitted a site plan to the city, but we do have an engineer. We know kind of what the site looks like and what the constraints are, but definitely hear that comment.
Okay, I'm going to turn it to, I think we've got another individual who would like to speak, so they'll have up to 10 minutes, and if you don't want to use all the time, that's fine, and we'll go back and forth as well. Yeah.
Very good members of the council. I'm Bo Thompson. I'm a resident on Nancy Ann Drive within the neighborhood just downstream from the subject parcel. Cordially invite anyone at council or staff to a watch party at our house. This invitation sounds like homage to the NCSU men's and women's basketball teams who are running through the NCAA, but our invitation is actually to this week's forecasted heavy rain. And our house is House Creek. The applicant just said we don't have a site plan. Parcel Z2823 is at the top of a 145-foot hill, unlike many in the area. I respectfully ask this committee to strongly recommend referring the parcel for further careful study of the stormwater impacts for 5 reasons. First, there is existing pervasive stormwater erosion in the neighborhood. This is the picture of one of our neighbors' properties being eaten away by stormwater in House Creek. Here's a picture of it on a map that we've looked at. It's down close to the culvert that goes under the belt line, where the topography is very steep. Here is another picture of House Creek looking south off the Greenway Bridge. Again, serious erosion in the banks, and the trees that are down are part of the evidence of stormwater erosion. To the north, the same thing. Trees down, and then you'll see in the back, that's the wall of the Beltline right before Wade Avenue that we'll talk about in a minute. More trees down within the floodplain, within the neighborhood. The creek's right there. I'm not sure when this tree's going, but it's going soon. It's not just the creek water, it's the surface water that we have seen created after recent upstream non-residential development, some of which was mentioned today. This particular neighbor has vigorously complained to the new landowner and the town and is being told there's nothing that they can do about this because they were in compliance with the rules. The second reason that we asked this committee to consider the request seriously is the outdated stormwater infrastructure that is throughout the neighborhood. We've got 4 culverts of tributaries of House Creek that run under the neighborhood. 2 of them have failed. This is one on Nancy Ann. The repairs have been substantial. They've required road closures for multiple weeks in both places. This is an aftershot. Here's another aftershot. Thanks for all the hard work to the staff and crew that put this back together. Different part of the neighborhood on Myron Drive. Again, the star there shows where this culvert is. There's 2 under-the-road culverts near my house that haven't failed yet, but the inspection report that was done in 2018 at my request does show a defect. And Mr. Miles recently wrote that the inspection found minor defects, but given this was done almost 6 years ago, a follow-up investigation may be warranted. So these are complaints of mine that we would like to have addressed. One of the most important maps that you'll see today, and I'm going to try to take my cursor and show you, is this blue line stream that goes into a pipe near one of my neighbor's house, where the unguided water goes into this culvert. And the picture of this culvert is before you now. All of the water from the applicant's parcel is supposed to go unguided down about half of the 145-foot cliff hill and find its way into this pipe unguided. We don't think that this is a reasonable infrastructure for Raleigh in 2024. The runoff already does not go in that pipe when it rains heavily. Here's some pictures of the result, just on the other side of this pipe. It's clear that the water is going to go around the culvert and into the neighborhood in an unguided fashion, and this is in its current form. My house is right in the middle of this picture. The culvert daylights at the back of my house, and this is the scene, this is after a light rain. Recently, although I didn't have my camera for it, there was a 4-foot rooster tail of water coming up out into the sky from where the water hit so hard downwards that it bounced off the concrete that's on the bottom of this retaining pond, was going up. The water that was coming out of this pipe looked like the back of Tom Cruise's fighter jet on Afterburners. There's a turtle that lives down there and lays eggs too in my backyard from time to time, if you're lucky to catch it there. So the third reason is the 145-foot gradient. The top of the parcel is at 480 feet. There's the parcel. There's another picture of it. The natural land has already been clear cut, so we're behind the 8-ball on filtration as it is. It goes down the hill. My house is there in the square in the middle, 480 feet to about 340 feet. Faster, longer, more water affects the creek. This is a substantial slope. It's not just any part of Raleigh. We'd ask all measures to control the runoff on this 145-foot decline from Blue Ridge to House Creek be managed. The fourth reason why we're concerned about this is everybody is familiar with the new Beltline construction and how it was designed to handle stormwater. Every bit of the water from this new interchange goes into House Creek at the Art Museum. The jury is out about how the predictions and the as-built compared to the design and the reality. So the jury is still out on how much water is coming off all of this enormous amount of new pavement that's going into House Creek in the Art Museum. Finally, there is a substantial flood risk. It's true that all the water west of Blue Ridge goes to Richlands Creek. All of the water from Hillsborough Street north, so all of the vet school, the University Club, the NC State Golf Club, all of that water culminates at Wade Avenue and goes under Wade Avenue into the Art Museum, where it picks up 3 other tributaries that have been this discussion today. All of it goes through a culvert under the Beltline, which it cannot go over this wall, which is currently being constructed, but it goes through one hole. Does anyone else besides me see a problem with all of this water trying to fit through that hole? Floodplain maps. This stream, this is actually a better stream. They've taken the impervious Polk Youth Center off the top of this parcel. This is a great stream. This is what we like to see. The masterful work that was done in the Art Museum, everybody's familiar with this wonderful terraced section to stop the stormwater is important. The Art Museum has lots to say, to brag about. The neighbors love this. This is what we like to see, good neighbors stopping the water from running into the neighborhood. Z2823 is at the top of this hill. We'd ask for this committee and the city council to strongly consider putting the research into this. We invite you to a watch party. I want you to come to our house to view the rain that's coming tomorrow in House Creek and in our neighborhood before we make any decisions. And that I'd like to reserve a bit of time for one of my colleagues.
Yeah, please stop the time. And will you just hit the slide one before? I just wanted to see the previous, yeah, there we go, the red, all the, nope, the very last slide,
Very last one, sure.
the 5 items. Thank you. Okay. Any questions from our committee? Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, I'm just curious what your asking of the applicant? I certainly understand, like, I appreciate all these pictures. It certainly does tell a story that there's need in this community. And also we have to be mindful of an individual's responsibility to, and so I'm curious, what's the specific ask from the applicant?
The ask is to disallow the rezoning until this global situation is resolved. I'm not 100% convinced that the city's stormwater understanding is as focused as it needs to be at this moment today. I don't think that we can get an answer to that before the April the 2nd hearing, which is coming up. They have no site plan other than some basic promises. It's our position that the rezoning should be denied, pending a more global understanding of what the city council needs to do in terms of conditions that would be effective in managing House Creek and its unnamed tributaries, of which the applicant is at the very pinnacle of that 145-foot drop. So I would ask for more time, more studying, so that the city council can be fully informed about what conditions need to be imposed.
I have a question for staff based on something that was brought up, that picture of the pipe that looked broken. I'm just curious if Ben or Wayne could speak to that. I think it was referred to as an unguided kind of system, which I'm guessing because water could spill out. Are you aware of that pipe, and how would that pipe get fixed? Is that of concern? Yeah, this pipe. Oh, just too small. Okay, there's not a crack. I thought there was cracks there.
May I step towards the screen so I can point so everybody
Sure.
can see it?
I just wasn't sure what was meant by unguided.
Well, unguided means that there is a river channel or a stream channel that is free-flowing through the entire upstream parcel from where there literally is a dam, a brick wall that was designed in the 1960s to try to capture water from a totally undeveloped piece of land up here and guide it into the culvert that's 60 years old. And so there is, this is it. This is what all of the water from this entire parcel needs
I
to
understand.
find
Yeah,
in order
sorry, I was
to get
confused.
further neighborhood. And this, when the water does not find it, which has been the case with some of the neighbors, then you end up with this.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. Any other questions from the committee before? I think there's still some time that the applicants have left to respond, if desired. How much time do they have? Okay, but any other questions from now from the, yes, Councilmember Patton.
I have a question for staff. For our staff.
Stormwater staff
Stormwater
or-
staff,
okay.
sorry, yeah. So if you'll step aside, I think we'll ask Wayne maybe, or Ben. I don't know who's better to answer it, and I don't know if you'll feel comfortable answering it, but I am curious if the conditions that ask to treat to the 25, 50, and 100-year storm are likely to improve the downstream conditions for the neighbors than what exists currently. Do you feel confident saying it would improve those conditions, the state?
Yeah, I
current state?
mean, I don't really feel confident saying that it will improve the condition downstream, but I can, the kind of goal would be to not make the situation any worse. And sorry if I wasn't speaking in the microphone. And the pipe that they're talking about, the 36-inch that's kind of unguided there, that is on, it's either private property or art museum property right there. So, like I said, we are not the city's not aware of the condition of that pipe because we're not allowed to assess that condition because it's not on our property. Mm-hmm. But we are aware that that's the outlet for this area kind of coming through there. So.
Got it. And is there, it's not, you've told us about the 14 cases. It sounds like there's, a sense of, there's a lot of private property that you can't assess, but like, is there such a thing as like a small area plan? Like, it sounds like each time we've looked at these documented, sorry, I know such a thing as a small area plan exists, but I meant like for stormwater, in case that wasn't clear. But, it seems like if we're looking at each of these cases individually, maybe they're not rising to the level of needing drainage assistance, but is there like a way to look at a region?
I mean, we are going through a master planning process throughout the whole city right now, and I'm not sure where House Creek would fall on that list, but we are working through each watershed right now to look at global stormwater issues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there has been a past watershed study of House Creek. I'll have to go back and review it. I think it's probably about 15 years old. It hasn't been updated recently. But there's no capital improvement projects that have been identified in this vicinity. And if that watershed study had identified some, then it would have been in our capital improvements plan. So
Is that a
nothing-
watershed study for House Creek?
Yes, for House Creek,
Okay.
correct.
And you said they're undergoing a master plan.
That's the same program. The program that Ben's referencing is we do watershed studies, a basin at a time, and rotate through the city over time. So House Creek was done, but not recently.
Okay. Do we have a sense of when House Creek will come back around?
Could not at this time. Those watershed studies are done based on priorities of capital improvements projects. And again, there's no major capital improvements project planned in this vicinity, nor other major complaints or known flooding issues. And those are the types of situations that would tend to drive a watershed study to be updated more frequently.
Got it.
Councilmember Black?
Something that was just raised to my attention that I'm curious about. Sorry, my eye is burning. Something that was just raised to my attention that I wanted to get clarity on. How many drainage issues are there?
Currently, we have 14 documented drainage issues out there. Now, that's if they've approached these staff and asked for a site visit and that sort of thing. So I'm not saying that's the only, there's only 14 drainage issues out there. I'm saying there's
Is that different than the staff report that says approximately 27 drainage complaints? Are the drainage complaints different than the drainage issues?
No, just the 14 directly downstream of this site. There might be 27 overall in the larger House Creek watershed, but there's 14 directly downstream of this site.
Okay.
And if it says 27, I'll go back and take a look at that.
Okay,
Apologize.
thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give time if the applicants wanted to respond to anything. And then I think there's a little bit of time left as well on the other side. Just wait a moment so we can get the time up.
Sure I got the time right. Is that it?
So we're only responsible for detaining stormwater that's
Just
on
one
this.
moment, sorry.
Okay.
This is not good for precise numbers.
That's okay.
Start from here.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so we are responsible for detaining stormwater on the site. That's all that we can commit to, and not anything downstream at this point.
Okay, thank you. And was there any other response from neighbors, or we've got, I think, 40 some seconds left?
Hi, my name is Charlie Rafan. I hope I'm not too loud there. I'll be brief. My house is on Nancy Ann Drive, and it's the house that had the flooding that Mr. Thompson showed. One thing I want to kind of clarify, that flooding you saw took place after the Montessori school was put in. So the considerations they had for the water retention or stormwater runoff from that school didn't stop anything. It actually made it worse than what was predicted. So I just want to add some color to that. That's the main reason we want to have more studies, more research on this one, because whatever was done for the school, we don't want to see that replicated. The other thing, that culvert that we show is overgrown and damaged, just to illustrate some of the problems, deficiencies with that, there was a tree, about this big of a tree that was growing up right above that culvert, and it was pushing the bricks and all away from the culvert. The city wasn't going to do anything to take down the tree. They said it was on private property, et cetera. And the art museum, same thing. It's kind of right on the border between our property and the art museum property. So we had the tree cut down at our own expense, but if we hadn't, that whole culvert would have collapsed, and it would have been even worse. So the neighbors are trying to take this seriously. We've actually taken steps ourselves to prevent this runoff, prevent more further damage. But I just want to make you all aware of that, shed some light on the background. So
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
I think at this time, I just want to summarize what we've heard so that we ensure we get the information from this committee meeting back to council so that will be delivered to our full council. Before I summarize, just any other questions from our committee at this time? Okay. So I know Tansy's probably already been taking some notes, but I thought those 5 items that were on the slide were helpful in terms of concerns from the neighbors. So, they're bringing up existing pervasive stormwater erosion problems, outdated stormwater infrastructure. They're concerned about the gradient from the parcel, 145 feet, the Beltline stormwater runoff, and then House Creek flooding risk. And they'd like to see all these issues resolved prior to a rezoning, this particular rezoning. I think what we heard from the applicant is that they are treating stormwater to the 100-year storm, which is, as we heard from staff, about as good as we see out there. We don't have a 500-year stormwater device that is confident in terms of the engineering capabilities. The applicant also stated that their role is to treat their site and not to fix these downstream issues, but certainly to not exacerbate them. So, I'm hearing the concerns. I believe it based on the pictures. I think we have issues across the city when it comes to erosion and outdated stormwater infrastructure. It affects a lot of different neighborhoods. We did have a difference in the number of drainage complaints noted from the staff presentation today, which was 14, compared to the staff report, which was 27. So that might be something helpful just to get edification on for our council meeting. What's the difference between those 14 and 27? Let's see. There was a mention of opportunities for GSI. When I saw the art museum stormwater control, what I see is some, I'm guessing some green stormwater infrastructure in terms of the plantings and allowing that, soaking of the soil before going to some gray infrastructure. So I do think that's a best practice. So that would be something that I would recommend consideration to the applicants. We also heard that there is not a site plan at this time. So it could be helpful for us to better understand what are the tree conservation areas going to look like. Certainly trees play a big role in stabilizing soil and allowing, again, some natural processes to treat the stormwater. So that would be something for consideration. Let's see, anything else from the committee that you want to make sure gets in that summary? Okay. That's all I have at this time. We do have a little extra time, so if anyone wants to bring anything additional up that they feel was not covered, this would be the opportunity. But again, please let it be additional, not the same thing we've already heard. Yeah, please come on up.
My name is Tom Turner, and I'm a neighbor. And I'd just like to thank Megan Patton, Mary Black, and Jane. I'd also like to thank Stormy and Christina for actually taking the time to come out with us and walk through our neighborhood. I was really taken back by their interest in their offer to help us. I'd also like to ask the Stormwater Department to come out to our neighborhood and take a look. I think they'd have a much better understanding. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. All right, well, I just want to thank everyone for coming, and good to see you all.
So you'll want to take a formal motion in terms of if you're reporting out and with what action?
Yeah, so I guess my motion is that we're going to report out the summary of the discussion today to council on April 2nd. Do I have a second? All right. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. And with
Question.
yes,
Was Mr. Branch excused?
yes, he is excused.
Thank you.
Yes.
There was not.
Yes, apologies. Councilmember Branch is excused. And with that, I am going to adjourn the committee meeting.